Imagine you're about to travel to a place you've never seen before. No maps, no guidebook, no one who's been there to tell you what to expect. Frightening, isn't it? Now imagine someone hands you a map. Suddenly, the same journey feels different. You know what's coming. You know which turns to take and which to avoid. This is the purpose of the text known as the Bardo Thirdle, often translated as the Tibetan Book of the Dead. It was composed as a set of instructions for a very specific traveler, the consciousness of a person who has just died, standing at the edge of a journey unlike any other. In this series, we'll walk through that journey together, one stage at a time, not as scholars, but as people trying to understand something that awaits every one of us. Because whether or not we believe in what comes after, we all share one certainty: this life will end. And having some sense of what may follow, some sense of the terrain, is described in this tradition as one of the great fortunes a person can have in this lifetime. Today, we begin with the very first moments. What happens on the first day of death? Before we get to the moment of death itself, it helps to understand one idea this tradition takes for granted: that karma, the law of cause and effect that shapes our experience, is not fixed. It can still be shaped, even now, even here, by the choices we make. That matters enormously in this context, because the tradition teaches something remarkable about the mind at the moment of death. It becomes exceptionally sharp, not dull, not fading, sharp. This is because in the state between one life and the next, the mind no longer perceives through the eyes, the ears, the nose, or any of the ordinary senses. It perceives directly, and a mind unclouded by the noise of the senses can, in principle, see and choose more clearly than it ever could in life. This is why the tradition says a meritorious person, someone who has lived with awareness and cultivated a calm, wholesome mind, is able to recognize a very particular sign that arises as death approaches and to hold on to it. Someone whose mind is agitated, weighed down by wrongdoing or fear, often cannot recognize this sign, even when it's right in front of them. Their own accumulated actions cloud their vision at the very moment clarity would matter most. But someone who has trained the mind through meditation, through steadiness, through years of quiet practice, meets that moment differently, fearless, mindful, able to fix their attention one-pointedly on what appears. Let's slow down and look closely at the actual moment of death, not as an abstraction, but as a physical process this tradition describes in real detail. As death approaches, the breath begins to change. The rising and falling grows gradually weaker until it slows to almost nothing. Then comes a very specific interval, the space between the last in-breath and the last out-breath. In this brief window, the tradition says, the life force settles into the central channel that runs along the spine. Then the final out-breath happens, and as it does, the life force moves inward and gathers at the heart. This is the moment the breath truly ceases. And it's precisely at this moment, not before, not after, that something else is said to occur. For those who have spent their life practicing meditation and have attained deep states of stillness known as jhana, this is the moment a particular light appears. The tradition calls it the light of nibbana, the first sign of the ultimate peace this whole path is oriented toward. It doesn't arrive gradually. It arrives right here, right at the threshold, for those whose minds are prepared to meet it. This first sign lasts only a short while. Traditional texts describe it as lasting about as long as it takes to eat a meal, perhaps 3 to 5 minutes. Brief, but enormously significant. Why can some people recognize and hold on to it, while others cannot? The tradition offers an answer rooted entirely in the mind's condition just before death. For someone who has practiced deeply, the life breath ceases with full awareness intact. In their final moments, they naturally recall the good they've done in life. And this recollection brings a kind of gladness, a settledness of mind. That settled, joyful clarity is exactly what allows them to fix their attention on the first sign as it arises. This may be part of why, in accounts told among Theravada Buddhists, certain monks are described as attaining full liberation at the very instant of their passing. Not through some external miracle, but because their minds were already trained to meet that single moment with total presence. For someone without that training, the same moment is much harder to navigate. The mind is unsettled. Wholesome, steady thoughts are scarce. And so the sign appears, but passes unrecognized. Because this moment is so brief and so easily missed, the tradition includes something remarkably practical, words that a person present at the deathbed can speak aloud to help steady the dying person's mind. The instruction is to remind them, gently and directly, of who they are, to name their good deeds, to recall the precepts they've kept, to tell them the time for your breath to cease has arrived, and those before you who carried merit like yours recognized this same sign, held their minds upon it, and found the path to peace. Then comes the heart of the instruction. A pure light appears before you now, radiant as a cloudless sky. Grasp it firmly. This is not something foreign, arriving from outside. Your own mind, when free of greed, hatred, and delusion, is itself this same clear light. The light appearing before you and the clarity of your own mind are not two separate things. They are one. A mind free of craving and anger, free of the mistaken sense of a fixed self, filled instead with kindness and equanimity, that mind and this profound peace are also not two things, but one. This passage is traditionally read 7 times to the dying person, slowly, with care. But the tradition is honest about something important. This level of clarity at death is rare. Even when the sign appears, most people are not able to recognize it. It's far more common for a person to be startled by it instead, to feel fear rather than recognition. When that happens, the tradition describes what comes next. The life force leaves the body. Various sounds are heard. The one who has just died feels as though passing through a narrow ravine. And then something strange occurs. This newly departed consciousness, sometimes called the Gandhabba, can actually see its own lifeless body. It sees the grieving faces of family and friends. It hears the weeping. And because the more frightening visions that come later haven't yet begun, this early stage is often marked by confusion. The being may not yet understand that it has died at all. This is where we'll pick up in our next episode, the strange, disorienting days that follow, and what this tradition suggests we can do to prepare for them long before we ever reach this threshold ourselves. This video series, How We Receive Our Next Birth, are based on my book, composed as a simple adaptation of the Tibetan Book of the Dead for non-Tibetan Buddhists, as the original book is too complicated for an ordinary person. This book I originally wrote in 1995 is available for download for free in English and Sinhalese languages, and it will also be translated to Russian and Thai languages as well in the near future. The download links are in the description and also in the first comment. Please subscribe to watch the full series. May all beings be free from the sufferings of samsara.